Good morning, everyone. It's a short 5 minutes, but we've got a lot on our plate today. First of all, I want to tell you that it's a real pleasure to see so many people here now and so many more that we expect to talk about this crucial topic, and I really applaud your interest in it. We're in a crisis situation at this point, and we really believe that all of you can be instrumental in turning things around in this country. Today, we are joined by prominent leaders in government, in the legal and educational communities, and our students, the future leaders. Where are they? The future leaders of our country. On behalf of the New York State Bar Association, I really want to extend my welcome to you. And that welcome extends to the future. We're interested in working with all of you, with your organizations, to integrating our efforts so that we can continue to work together on this critical cause. We are inspired by the presence of U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who will address us virtually, and will take questions from students later in the program. I have to ask you to please refrain from taking photos during the Justice's speech. We do have some journalists here, and we're going to ask that they refrain from taking any pictures except for the first 2 minutes and last 2 minutes of her remarks. We are also very grateful that the Chief Judge of the Court of Appeals, Rowan Wilson, will deliver remarks. I've had an opportunity to speak to Judge Wilson on numerous occasions about this program and about this problem, and he is very, very involved in the issues. I want to thank our co-chairs. There is Gail Ehrlich. Gail, where are you? In the back of the room. Right next to Gail is Jay Warona. And Christopher Rano. Who's over there? I want to tell you that as president of the Bar Association, I get credit for this. But if it wasn't for our staff, and in particular Susan DeSantis, Bridget Donlin, Mercedes Pino, Kathy Sahutsky, and Stacy Whiteley, this couldn't happen. They are the foundation of this structure, and I thank them very much as well. In addition, I want to recognize Scott Carson, our past president, as well as Hank Greenberg, who both were very interested in this process, but it got waylaid as a result of the pandemic. And we are in debt to their germinating this idea. So thank you, Scott. I know Hank's here, but. So today's convocation is certainly amongst the most significant events of my term as president of the New York State Bar Association. It's not hyperbole to state that our rule of law is being compromised, our democracy is in peril, and that is partly because of the sobering lack of knowledge about how our democracy works amongst our population. An Annenberg study in 2022 found that fewer than half of our country's citizens can name the 3 branches of government. I've said this repeatedly and people are shocked, but it's true. Only 1 in 4 can identify the 5 rights protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution. In addition, the most recent Pew Research study tracking Americans' trust in government found that only 20% of Americans believe that they can rely upon their government to do the right thing. Now that's bipartisan, by the way. This is appalling, especially in an era when the internet is supposed to provide access to more information and well-rounded information. But the reality is that the mega-million-dollar conglomerates that own the most influential social media platforms develop algorithms to divert users to information tailored to their interests. They're not getting well-rounded information. They're getting pointed information. They're in an echo chamber. They're hearing what they already say. By limiting what users see, these companies rob the American public of knowledge of opposing viewpoints, and it is understanding these opposing viewpoints that is going to lead to debate and discussion, which furthers the democratic principles. And this all comes as we are about to go towards our 60th presidential election in our nation's history. Our democracy is being threatened by a growing mistrust among our fellow citizens who doubt the effectiveness of our electoral process. This presidential election is shaping up to be the most contentious one since 1864 during the Civil War between the people who were seeking peace and those who were staunchly in favor of the war effort. Today we are divided as a nation. I don't have to tell you that. We have a duty as lawyers, as educators, as citizens in general, to repair our democracy, and today is a starting point, hopefully, for all of us, including our students. Sound civic education is a building block of reasoned political discourse, which is a foundation of a healthy democracy. Part of our mission in promoting civic education is to encourage students to talk to each other civilly, so that they can work together to solve problems, learn how to spot misinformation, and become more informed voters. When they learn how to disagree with each other and debate, it bolsters and it invigorates our way of life, our democracy. Voting is habit forming. People who are encouraged to vote in this election and actually vote have a much higher probability of voting in future elections. So we really have to get people out to vote, but not just to pull the lever. It takes a little work ahead of time. They've got to educate themselves. They can't just read whatever's on Google. They've got to understand what they're voting for. We need to encourage our students, whether they are in elementary school, middle school, high school, college, whether they attend a suburban or an inner city school, so that they can become well-informed citizens who appreciate the power of their voices. As for our students themselves, they must have an appreciation and an understanding that their formal education is not an end in itself, but rather a map that helps guide them towards a life of an unending appreciation of curiosity and learning. The best students are not ones that merely receive an education. They pursue their education aggressively. They are the ones that ask questions. They take time to talk to their teachers. They take time to actually listen. And our teachers must respond by having those discussions with their students and educating their students with multiple sides of the issues, not just one-directional interpretations. Our democracy requires the same demands of all of our citizens. So students, I'm still not sure where you are, but there you are. So students, when you study civics, don't think of your goals in terms of just grades. I know you have to think about grades, but think about it as how you're going to develop the guiding principles of your life. How do you want your future to look? How do you want your children's future to look? How do you want your neighborhoods to look? How do you want your values to be reflected in your daily life? And understand that learning about civics is not merely learning how to formulate agreements, but rather it's about gaining knowledge and skills to engage in reasoned debate. It also requires you to use your voice and to use your ears, because expressing an opinion is the foundation of our democracy, and listening to other people express their opinions is a way of learning. When it comes to the great responsibility that you will take on, it's going to take courage and it's going to take discipline. You can't just gravitate towards those whose opinions you're aligned with. You've got to talk to the people who you disagree with. You have to listen and, more importantly, learn from those whose beliefs may be completely opposite of yours. But I will tell you this, some of your greatest mentors will be the people that you disagree with. Ask any lawyer in this room if they have learned from their adversaries, and there's not one person here that will say no. Every person learns from their adversaries. This requires action. Look to your teachers, your professors, your parents, your government leaders, the justices, that many of whom are sitting here today, and your fellow students for inspiration. Be inspired, be heard, and listen, and be passionate without being vitriolic. It is how you can impact your future and the future of our country. I would call upon you to be knowledgeable voters and leverage your skills for public service. Take the time to speak to your neighbors, to speak to your city and town leaders, and engage them in civil discourse. And understand that you can help teach someone and learn from that same person. One of the best ways to learn is to teach. We've got a lot of people in education here. I believe that they would all back that up. You may disagree with the person you're talking to or debating with, but your best mentors will be those whose values may differ from yours. And most importantly, believe in yourself and the power your voice has. When young adults in the 60s felt that their opinions were not being heard, their political activism helped spearhead the ratification of the 26th Amendment that lowered the voting age from 21 to 18. So that was a big deal in the 60s. When the young adults, in 1982, Gregory Watson needed to do an essay for one of his government courses at the University of Texas, he came across the 27th Amendment that basically said that legislators could not increase their wages during the session. It had never been passed. He submitted this to his teacher, and his teacher looked at him and said, "This is unrealistic. I can't really give you a good grade on this paper." He got a C-. But he continued to pursue this. And when Michigan became the 38th state to ratify the amendment in 1992, Watson realized his lofty ambition. To that end, let's appreciate our responsibility to encourage each other to participate in our upcoming elections, to gain a better understanding of electoral proceedings, and to discuss issues in a passionate and honest manner so that our government adheres to the will of the people. Let's be an inspiration for the next Gregory Watson of the world, and let us forge a path that leads to the growth and resiliency of our democracy. We really need to do that, and the world really needs us to do that. So thank you. So my next statement is really an honor. I have the opportunity to introduce Judge Mae DiAgostino of the Northern District of New York. Judge DiAgostino was nominated by former President Barack Obama and was confirmed unanimously by the United States Senate in March of 2011, and since that time has been a judge in our Northern District, which is here. At that time, she was the first woman from Albany to serve in the Northern District and was the only woman serving in upstate New York. Judge DiAgostino is a past chair of the trial lawyers section of our New York State Bar Association, and we're very proud of that, and is a member of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers and the American College of Trial Lawyers. She's a graduate of Siena and also from Syracuse University School of Law, where she was awarded the International Academy of Trial Lawyers Award for Distinguished Achievement in the Art and Science of Advocacy. So Judge DiAgostino, we'd love to have you give us some knowledge. thank you for being here. We really appreciate it.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for that very kind introduction. If you were looking for a cheerleader, a member of a cheer team for civics education, I would ask that you appoint me. It's been at the core of everything that I've done since I've been an attorney and since I have been on the bench. I did play basketball at Siena College, and soon after I graduated law school and came back to the Albany area, I decided to coach girls basketball, and I was coaching a 5th, 6th grade team. We were pretty bad, but the parents thought that I was quite odd because I told them that I was an attorney, and I asked them permission at the end of the season to take the 5th and 6th graders over to the Albany County Courthouse to see the Court of Appeals. And the parents took me up on it, but they still thought I was a little crazed. And I don't know if any of you ever saw the movie Dead Poets Society, but there's a scene there where the teacher is having the students kick a soccer ball into a net. But before they kick it, they have to cite a famous quotation from Plato or Socrates. And with my students on the basketball team, every time they made a shot, I would say, "What's the burden of proof in a criminal case?" So many of the parents would just say, "Walk away from the basketball coach." I love teaching young students about civics. I love it so much that my own child once said to me when I was explaining the criminal justice system and the judicial branch in general, he said, "Mom, you're not normal." And I'll take that, but it's important to me, particularly the judicial branch of government. And whenever I have an opportunity to speak, such as an event like this, if there are teachers here, if there are administrators of schools, I'm urging all of you to let us be partners with your various schools in teaching civics, because I think that we do have a lot to offer. When I go down to the city, and I do go down there with some frequency, I always stop and read the words on top of the New York Supreme Court building. "The true administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good government." I believe that, and I love sharing that concept with students at the courthouse and in schools. Every chance I have to be out in the public is another chance to engage. 4 years ago, I was up in my favorite spot, Lake Placid, where I truly get to decompress. And I was sitting around a fire pit and began a conversation with someone who was younger than I was, but certainly not all that young. And we were sharing stories, where we were from and that sort of thing. And he said, "What do you do for a living?" And, federal judges, when we don't know somebody, we don't usually tell them what we do. So I was a little nervous. I said, "Well, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I teach at the Lake Placid Elementary School." And I said, "Oh, well, I'm a federal judge." And just by sitting by that fire pit that night, I gained a comrade in arms with respect to civic education, because I now have a very special relationship with the Lake Placid Elementary School. Whenever I go to Lake Placid, I stop and speak to the 3 5th grade classes in the elementary school, and that school will be coming to us in, I think, next month for a day of programming on civics. So for those of you who teach, for those of you who are online and you're affiliated with a school district, call me. We want to service your students. I think it's so important when we can to get students who are very young. At our courthouse, we service students from pre-K right on through law school. I always think about the Stephen Sondheim lyrics, "Children will listen." And interestingly, well before children even walk into the courtroom that I use, I know that they have listened. When I tell the children that I was nominated by Barack Obama, I often hear a high schooler say, "So you're an Obama judge." Well, they did not get that from me. And I always take the opportunity to say to them, and I'm very humbled by it, but proud of the way things were when I was confirmed, because I was confirmed 88-0 with Republicans and Democrats voting. And so when the high school students will say, and I know they've heard it out in the community, "Oh, you're an Obama judge," I say, "Well, I want to tell you something about that." And I talk to them about my confirmation process, and I talk to them about the vote. And then I say what I sincerely believe and what I practice. And I say, many of you may draw some assumptions about me because you now know that President Obama nominated me. But I want to tell you this, and if you don't remember anything else that I say during the hour that you have with me, I want you to know this. The day that I would ever decide a case to please a president or a political party would be the day that I would not walk from this job, but I would run from this job. And I look them in the eyes when I say that, because I have put my signature on decisions that have personally hurt, but they were the right thing to do on the basis of the facts and the law. And the children need to hear that, and they need to hear it from a judge. Other than the fact that I find civics education just glorious, I have to do it. Because if one more student asks me if I'm friends with Judge Judy, I will perish. I will just totally lose it. When I think about civics education, I often think about what our students do in our schools every day, which is pledge allegiance to the flag. We have a local television station that puts virtually toddlers on their morning program. They've been videotaped, and not just toddlers, but older children saying the pledge. It's really cute, but it's fun to watch the 3 or 4-year-olds struggle with indivisible and with liberty. But I always ask myself, do the students really have a clue as to what the words mean? That's why civic education is so important. Do they know why they're pledging to the flag of the United States and not to the Congress or to the president? Do they really know what indivisible is? Do they understand the word republic? And that brings me to the point that civic education for students, it has to be fun, it has to be uplifting. We ask students to do a lot of rote memorization, I think, in our schools. What are the 3 branches of government? The 3 branches are. But we want them to critically think about what they're saying and what they're doing. Because we all know, I'm preaching, to everybody who knows the truth, which is that democracy is not going to stand in the United States unless we can engage students in civic education in a meaningful way so that they want to participate in government. So I will just say a few words about what we do in the Northern District of New York to try to be full partners with our schools. We have what's called an open doors program, and I like the name of that because our courtroom and our courthouse is always open to the public. So we like to get students in, as I said, when they are young, and we generally give them a half day of programming. That includes coming into the courthouse in the morning and having our chief clerk talk to them about all branches of government. And I love how he does it because he talks to them about the branches. He asks the students, do you know who represents you in the New York State legislature? Do you know who represents you in Congress, in the Senate? He talks to the students about the division of power, the United States Supreme Court, and he always promises the students that at 1:30, after they've had their pizza party with us, if they can tell him what knowledge he's imparted to them, they'll get what I call the cha-chas, the t-shirts, the water bottles, the key holders. Of course, everybody gets the t-shirt and the water bottle, but I will say with the young students, they are really paying attention to the civics lesson because they're looking forward to the water bottle and the t-shirt. But after that, we have the children hear from a judge. We have assistant United States attorneys come down and talk to the students about the criminal justice system. We have members of our fantastic public defenders come to the courtroom to talk to the children about all of the topics that are necessary to understand about defense work in the United States and what it means to be accused of a crime. And we have representatives of the United States Marshal Service come down and talk to the students about law enforcement, sometimes the FBI. So in the course of a half day, they are really exposed to a lot. Now, for selfish reasons, if I can get to the pizza party, I always ask if what they enjoyed the most. And of course, I would love if they say they enjoyed, my speech to them at 9 a.m. And I'm waiting, but as particularly with young students, what I always hear, and you can probably guess, is the Marshal Service, because there's something about a pair of handcuffs that they just find more scintillating, than everything that I've said about the civil justice system and the criminal justice system. But another part of that civics program that we do through the Open Doors program is something that I kind of created on the fly, but I love it. After they meet our chief clerk and they know he's an important person, while I'm speaking to them, with my iPad off to the side, our chief clerk usually comes in, grabs my iPad, puts it under his jacket, and leaves. 5 minutes later, I'm doing let me just check my iPad for a moment so I can see if I'm finished. And of course, my iPad is gone. And I'll look at 75 fifth graders, for example, and I'll say, any of you see my iPad? No response. Did any of you take my iPad? No, we didn't take your iPad. And do any of you have any idea where my iPad went? I see fifth graders afraid to speak out against authority right then and there. They all saw him take my iPad and put it under his coat. So we bring Mr. Damarad back in and we impanel a grand jury. And we have an accusatory instrument that he stole government property. And I'm the prosecutor. And we bring in another one of our attorneys to play the defense. And I tell the students they can't decide the case on what they saw. They can only decide the case on the proof. I'm proud to say Mr. Damarad has been convicted 100% of the time. But how fascinating is it for me when I ask the students, why did you find the way you did? Well, Judge, he seemed to be shifting his eyes when he was talking to us. He didn't look at us when he testified. We just don't think we could believe him. In 25 minutes, they have seen the principles that I discussed with them earlier. And I always say to the students that I don't believe that we have a perfect criminal justice system. I talk to them about striving for perfection, as our founders asked that we do. But I also tell the students that I don't know of any utopian justice system, and that I happen to think that ours is the best in the world, but it's far from perfect. And I usually talk to them about the burden of proof in a criminal case by asking them to imagine a line in a sandy beach. And I tell the students it's not enough to prove someone guilty to walk close to that line on the beach. It's not enough to touch the line. You have to cross the line. That's what beyond a reasonable doubt means. And I think it's very important for the students to hear that. In addition to having the students come to the courthouse, if a school cannot come to us, we are more than willing to send a team to the school. And let me say this is not meant as a criticism to any of the local schools, because I can't even pretend what it would be like to try to run a school district and programming and teaching. But I often have to really try to use my power of persuasion. I make personal phone calls to schools. Will you come for our Law Month programming? Can we send somebody to you? And I often hear, I'm sorry, the month of May is testing month, programming, teaching, we can't afford a day. And I hear this all year. We are celebrating Law Month at our courthouse, and I think about 4 local schools took us up on it. Letters went out to every school that in the Northern District of New York. And it makes me sad, because I know it's very difficult to give us your children for an hour, 2 or 3, but we think that we can make a real difference. We often do reenactments where in the Northern District we reenact historic trials. And I want to conclude my remarks, because I know that there's so much that has to be accomplished today, just by telling you 2 things so meaningful to me about civic education. They may not have a big impact on you, but they've had a major impact on me. One is, last year in Lake Placid, after I talked to a 5th grade class, everybody had filtered out, and a young student came up to me and said, "Judge, would you be willing to hug me?" And, I got down close to the floor, because she was a very tiny little girl. I hugged her. It was like she was never going to let go. And after we stopped hugging, I said, "Is everything okay?" And she said, "Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you." And she went out. The teacher told me, he said, "Judge, that youngster has the most difficult family life that you could ever imagine. Thank you for doing that." And I said, "Well, that was easy. That's the easiest thing I'll be asked to do for 10 years. But the other thing is that we did a reenactment of the Susan B. Anthony case in all of our divisions a couple years ago. We did it up big. We get the historically correct transcript from the circuit, thanks to all the people at the circuit who do this for us. And we were doing the reenactment in Syracuse. I'm the producer. I'm a frustrated Hollywood producer. And we asked a school with children of color, a school in an economically challenged area of Onondaga County, if some of their young girls could play suffragettes for us. And we went out to a costume shop and we got them the suffragette costumes, the sashes, and as part of their class they made placards, "Free Susan B. Anthony, let women vote." And I went up before the reenactment and I was riling them up, come on, support Susan B. Anthony. They were having pizza, they were all excited. So the show starts, I call it the show. And we've got everybody in the courtroom, the judge, the jury, and now the suffragettes in their beautiful white costumes and sashes are going to file in, and they're coming in, and one student stops at the entrance, and I see the teacher bend over and say, "No," and I'm like, So, eventually we got this final suffragette in. And 15 minutes into the program, she was really into it, with the placard, "Free Susan B. Anthony." When the program was over, when the reenactment was over, I learned from the teacher, I couldn't imagine why that child froze before she entered. And the teacher said, she's had some bad experiences with being in court. And she absolutely, for a period of minutes, was unwilling to put her big toe into that courtroom. I think we helped change a life for the better that day. I know it's a small thing, but it meant a whole lot to me because afterwards, when I went up to the group and spoke to the students, them having the ability to watch that trial, I think meant a lot to them. And the youngster who wouldn't enter the courtroom had a broad smile on her face. She was able, at least for one night, to see something happy and positive happen in a courtroom of law. Thank you, Professor Christopher Riano, for inviting me to the convocation. Thank you, New York State Bar Association, the task force, the Committee on Youth and Law and Citizenship, and everyone associated with the Civics Convocation. I am eager to learn today. I look forward to it, and thank you all for your time.